Good morning, students. Yesterday we had ended the video by highlighting how the society got more complex, and that was something which is also agreed by the Buddhist texts. They have also commented in a similar fashion, whereby, as per them, when the whole humanity started, the life was simple, everything went fine, people were. There was an idyllic state of peace, taking from nature only what they needed for every meal. So things are very simple and innocent. But as the complexities went up, people started living and interacting more and more with each other. Then naturally, students, it happens that you do not always pick up the good things of different cultures. You also pick up certain things which might not be as pleasant in the long run as you would ideally wish it to be. So that is the same thing which was highlighted by this in this rather topic, explaining social differences, a social contract. This suggests that the institution of the last paragraph of this topic, this suggests that the institution of kinship was based on human choice, with taxes as a form of payment for services rendered by the king. So what this Buddhist texts have also mentioned that at the same time that as the society got more and more complex, the people felt the need that yes, they need to carry on their own business. A trader felt that yes, he needs to carry on trading. A farmer felt that yes, he could not now be responsible for looking after the affairs of the village, his family, and also his own farming and the cows and the animals. So naturally, they needed certain structures to take care of those issues. A trader similarly wanted a peaceful environment, a stable environment where he can actually concentrate on trading and selling and purchasing of goods, and so that he thrives, his business flourishes. So naturally, all these things need a situation where things are stable, things are peaceful, things are more predictable. So you do come across, you have to formulate certain structures, and then you end up choosing a person whom you feel is the right man for the job, whom everyone respects, whom everyone likes, whom everyone adores, who is considered to be very resourceful, and someone who can actually take everyone along. And that is probably for the first time he is chosen as their leader, and then they pay their obedience to him, and of course consider him as a leader. He's very much respected, and they pay him for whatever he does. And then of course a situation would have come that he could not have handled all the job and responsibilities on his own, so he needed some more people, and then some more people were employed, and then similarly a whole bureaucracy got created. And that's how through hundreds and thousands of years, the whole administrative machinery expanded. And then there were different uh, social divides, administrative divides, which gradually came up. Students, you have to understand, it is not always about Brahmin conspiracy and the upper caste conspiracy, which we are very tempted to study and look at through the prism of every function. Students, you have to understand, like for example, let's say you have studied I'm sure in class 9 as well as in class 10, French Revolution, if you remember. Then it happened in France. They do not have the jati system or the varna system. But why did French Revolution happen in the first place? It happened precisely because the same, they all were Christians. They all prayed to the same Jesus Christ. They all were good looking or bad looking or fair or dark, right? But they still had the French Revolution, right? And thousands got killed. And why was that? Precisely because of the class differences, right? You had a king who presided over everything. Aristocracy would conserve all the power for itself, would keep all the power within its own grasp, would not share it with the people who were responsible for making them rich. The similar was the behavior of clergy. They were living in an old, they were living in their own ivory tower. They were really not bothered about what the serfs thought about them. They were the ones who would never pay taxes. The aristocracy would never pay taxes taxes. That is the richest segment of the society. Just look at the irony. The richest segment of the society would not be paying tax. The clergy wouldn't pay tax. The aristocracy wouldn't pay tax. Definitely, the king would never pay tax. So it is only the serfs and the peasants who are who are toiling, working like crazy, and paying tax as well, though they happen to be the most impoverished section of the population. Now, where is Varna system or the Jati system do you think is responsible here? It clearly isn't. It is basically about human nature, right? So, you guys are now class 12 students. Kind of try and think in an evolved fashion. So, today, coming to the topic of handling texts, historians, and the Mahabharata. Uh, if you look through the sources cited in this chapter once more, you would notice that historians consider several elements when they analyze texts. They examine whether texts were written in Prakrit, Pali, or Tamil, languages that were possibly or used by ordinary people, or in Sanskrit, a language meant most exclusively for priests and elites. They also consider the kinds of text, or were these mantras learned and chanted by ritual specialists, or stories that people could have read, essentially implying that, if certain message needed to be taken to the normal people, the common folk, it had to be written in a different kind of language. It had to be explained in a much more simplistic way, compared to if a particular kind of message had to be taken to to a different section of the population, probably which was a much more learned section of the population, more educated, more affluent, Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and then you would write things in a different language, probably Sanskrit, and that is how it would be. Like, for example, Valmiki ji wrote Ramayana in Sanskrit, but the Goswami Tulsidas did not, because he wanted every person in India to understand what he had written. So his preference was definitely not Sanskrit, and that's why he didn't choose Sanskrit to write Ramcharitamanas, though it was again highlighting the glory of Sri Ram. So you have to understand all of that, and that is what is being mentioned here. Now, languages and content. So let us look at the language of the text. The version of Mahabharata, as we have been considering, is in Sanskrit, although there are versions in other languages as well. However, the Sanskrit used in the Mahabharata is far simpler than that of the Vedas. Now, just see. So, Vedas was definitely not meant for the common class of people. It was meant for the law givers, the law makers, that is Brahmins. So, naturally, the Sanskrit in Veda is entirely a different kind of a complicated Sanskrit which cannot be understood very easily even today. Yes, and compared to Sanskrit, to Mahabharata, which is again written in Sanskrit, but is known to everyone. Every Indian, whichever religion he comes from, he knows what Mahabharata is. What is the story of Mahabharata, right? Because for generations and generations, it has been handed down to us, of course. But the language in Mahabharata, which is there, is very simple. It's the same thing with Valmiki, who has written Ramayana, and his writing was very simple. It was definitely not Sanskrit, which was there written in Vedas. So that is what this is about. However, generally, historians agree that Mahabharata was meant to be a dramatic, moving story, and the historians, this paragraph, historians usually classify the contents of the present texts under two broad heads: sections that contain stories and designated as narrative, and sections that contain prescriptions about social norms, designated as didactic. Now, right next, it's written what's the meaning of didactic, refers to something that is meant for purpose of instruction. So this division is by no means watertight. The didactic sections include stories, and the narrative often contains a social message. Yeah, so